Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video, and this time we are taking a look at the UK version of something that we saw recently from the US, and I would say that definitely the UK version is the superior option here. We talked about that at the time, so this should hopefully come as no surprise, and if you've been following the series, you probably know what we're talking about here, and that is Ahsoka, the complete first season, in its home video release. You may recall that in the US, relatively recently, we got this. And I do have the J card on here to be able to show you how this will differ. Now, this was the only version of Ahsoka that you could get in the United States. You have your glossy steelbook here. And inside, you have yourself some nice, somewhat glossy art cards that we looked at before. There were 2 discs inside, episodes 1 through 4, and then 5 through 8. And they were still those same kind of weird silvery labels that we saw on previous Disney Plus series releases, where it's like they basically have that silver disc and then they use sort of the color to make an outline of all the words and images that they want to show. But this was a big deal because if you look inside here, this is just a 4K copy of the series. And yeah, for the previous releases, like Mandalorian Complete Seasons 1, 2, Obi-Wan the Complete Series, and/or the Complete First Season, with that kind of stuff, we had seen 4K-only releases. That was not the big deal. But in those cases, we also got a Blu-ray release at the same time. Heck, for some of them, the earliest ones, we got a Disney Movie Club version that had Blu-ray and DVD together, but Disney Movie Club is now long gone. But apparently now, so are Blu-ray copies in the United States. It was crappy before that if you wanted 4K and Blu-ray, you had to buy 2 different copies of that season's release, but at least you could get them. It was better in the UK because you could buy them in one package because they came together, but at least the option was there in the US if you wanted either format or technically both by buying both. Not this time. Now, we have sort of moved on, I guess, in the US market away from Blu-ray at all for these series, and it's all just 4K. And it's coming through Sony Pictures Home Entertainment as a new distributor for North America, and that has also brought us Dolby Vision HDR on the 4K discs themselves. We had not seen Dolby Vision for Star Wars outside of the initial release in 2018 of The Last Jedi in 4K, and even later releases when they reauthored the discs for that didn't have Dolby Vision on it anymore. So this somewhat left the question of how this was going to be handled in other markets, particularly the UK, as we've looked at the UK releases of all those previous 4 items here. And sure enough, they kept to essentially the same pattern we saw before, which makes this a superior purchase, even more so than it was in the past. So we have here the Ahsoka Steelbook coming out of the UK, 4K Ultra HD plus Blu-ray, includes bonus extras and concept art cards. You have your image up there in the corner on the J card of the open steelbook with the art cards, but no discs showing here. You have the actual J card that has the art from the bottom of the steelbook art. You have your rating there. I'll go ahead and take the J card off of here. You have the rating on either side, and you have a product number underneath, again, on either side. The top of the J card says Ahsoka, or Star Wars Ahsoka, the complete first season. The bottom is just a continuation of the art. And there's the back as compared to the US back. You'll notice here a little bit differently organized, but that tends to be the case with what we see out of these UK releases. 4K Ultra HD Collector's Edition, the complete first season. No mention of Blu-ray up there, but it does show in the image the open steelbook, the art cards, and both types of discs. Listing of episodes with a note that, of course, Shadow Warrior and the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord have those commentaries by Dave Filoni. A list there of all the bonus features. I would note that these are laid out in such a way, as you would expect, that the commentaries are the only extras on Disc 2. All the other 4, that is Ahsoka Legacy, Path of the Apprentice, Ghosts of the Past, and Darkness Rising, are all little featurettes that are found on Disc 1. I talked about those when we did our US review of this, so I won't be going into detail on those. If you want details, see that episode. Then you got your stats about 4K and all, specifications of the discs, rating, your various icons, including Dolby Audio, Dolby Vision-Atmos, Ultra HD Blu-ray, and Blu-ray in this case, UPC, and all your legalese. I would note that in the legalese here, it does note that the distributor to contact with questions, this is the case for any of these, has been Elevation Sales in the UK, handling that for Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment. Again, for the US, if you look down there, distributed by Sony Pictures Home Entertainment because of the way that has changed for North America. So there's your J card there. It does come with the art cards again. It's the same art, but again, the finish isn't quite as glossy. It's more of a matte finish on these, and the numbers on the back have changed as we saw with all the previous ones. So for the US, with the more glossy ones, the number, if you're looking for them, I don't know why I mention this every time, but I will. The number is the same on all three in the US, 12709435. If you are looking for ones out of the UK, so you get them loose or something like that, they are more matte finish. They have, the copyright stuff, but then in the corner they have that number. And these are BUT 4023201 IN, and then either the number 1, 2, or 3, depending on which one of the art cards we are looking at. I would also note, because of the number of discs, you're probably not going to want to keep them inside the steelbook this time because of the way the spokes would stab into them, so I've been keeping them essentially like so, behind the steelbook. Had to figure out which I was grabbing here off the table. The steelbook itself is essentially designed the same, except, of course, as we've seen with all these other ones from the UK, it is a matte finish, not a glossy finish here. So we have the slightly embossed there, Star Wars Ahsoka, that's the part that's embossed, the complete first season. It is not embossed, by the way, on the US version at all, it's just flat. Okay. And then your spine there. You've got Lucasfilm, Star Wars Ahsoka, the 1 for Season 1, and a Blu-ray symbol, as opposed to the US, where you got your 1 at the bottom with no Blu-ray symbol, no Lucasfilm symbol up the top. Instead, it's Ultra HD Blu-ray, which, we usually see in the UK that if something is Ultra HD Blu-ray and Blu-ray, a lot of times it'll just say Blu-ray on the spine. So that's not a big surprise. Then you have your artwork there on the back, and then kind of that darker grayish, almost silver down here at the bottom, your legalese and your Lucasfilm, as opposed to pretty much the same color on the US one. It's a little bit brighter on the US one, but I think that may just be because of it being glossy rather than matte in this case. But otherwise, similarly designed. We will see that the art inside here is also similarly designed. So we got our action scene there, as you would expect. It does have to have the arm, though, of course, because it's got 4 freaking discs in it this time around. So you take your discs, and we can compare them to the US here in just a moment, but we have disc 1. Notice here, it's not that silver craziness anymore. It's white, as we saw on all the other ones for the Disney Plus series so far, so it is much easier to read here for the UK. So we have Star Wars Ahsoka, the complete first season, the silhouette there of Ahsoka. Your much shorter legalese here that doesn't say anything about Sony in this case. It's just, copyright, used under authorization, etc., etc. Disc 1, episodes 1 through 4, 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, Lucasfilm, rating, product number. Again, that one is episodes 1 through 4 and the bonus featurettes. We have the one here with Sabine for the second disc. It says disc 2, switches the episode numbers, but essentially laid out the same way. This one has episodes 5 through 8 and the commentaries on the 2 episodes. And then, the thing that does not exist in the United States at all, Blu-ray copies. And they are effectively the same. Same episodes, same featurettes and commentaries. The way that they're split on 4K is just an HD version rather than a 4K version of these. So we have this sort of orangish color, very Ahsoka-esque color there. Star Wars Ahsoka, the complete first season. Different silhouette of Ahsoka. Disc 1, episodes 1 through 4. Blu-ray, in this case, the Blu-ray symbol. Lucasfilm, rating, product number. You got your legalese, and then your region ABC. Yes, these will play in American players just fine. Again, making these a better option for those in the US if you're willing to import, because you get the 4K discs and Blu-ray, and it will indeed play here. And then we have disc 2, again laid out essentially the same way as far as content goes, and laid out similarly to disc 1 for Blu-ray, just as disc 2, episodes 5 through 8, different Sabine silhouette. So kind of a cool thing, they kept who was on which disc, but changed the silhouette themselves rather than just mirroring 4K. And again, just to give you that comparison from US to UK, like I always do, there's your first 4K disc with the silver, the white there for the UK. I tend to find this much easier to read. I understand this is meant to be fancier, but this is certainly easier to read. And I feel like that's almost a microcosm of my feeling about 4K. Like, what I tried to do with this before I went through and started taking my notes and stuff was just to pop it in my PS5, play it on our 4K TV, and just kind of take a look at it, right? Not only just compare it to what we see in the US, but just kind of take a look at it in general. I jumped to the beginning of Shadow Warrior. Spoilers for Ahsoka if you hadn't seen it, but Shadow Warrior has a scene in which they're in the world between worlds, and Anakin basically says, I haven't taught you everything yet, and slashes his lightsaber down, smashing through a little like roadway type thing that they're on, a path that they're on, and Ahsoka goes falling. And I notice when I look at the 4K version versus the HD version, which I can now thanks to the UK set here, for me, 4K always feels dim compared to anything else. It always feels dim. And I think that's because they're getting that huge separation between the brightest brights and the darkest darks, and most things are a little bit darker rather than going for the brighter angle, no matter what settings I use on my PS5 or on the television. But in that dimmer picture, the dark colors, like Anakin's outfit versus the background, are very clear, and you can tell that the picture is much more crisp. I put in the Blu-ray version, the HD version, and it's brighter, but even though it's clear, even my eyes can see a little bit of muddiness in the dark colors right next to each other. I feel like that's kind of the same thing with the discs here, right? Ooh, shiny. This is supposed to be cool and extra fancy, and this with just the white color, ugh, that's not nearly as cool because this is fancy, this is not. And yet for me, fancy, harder to see, and yet like dim. And then your not so fancy certainly comes off as much easier for me to see everything. It's certainly brighter visually. I don't know what's getting me sometimes with 4K. I don't know if it's the fancy part or the schmancy part, but one of the parts sometimes messes with my eyes a little bit. My eyesight is not necessarily to be trusted all the time. But suffice to say, if you wanted Ahsoka in 4K, you could get it in the US like that. If you want it on Blu-ray, you got to go outside the US, and this package from the UK is a great one to do that because you're going to get all the bonus features on both formats, and you're going to wind up getting them all in the same package. And yes, again, that was a great thing in the past, sure, but that was just to keep you from having to buy 2 copies. Now, this is the only way to get Blu-ray copies. You must import. So again, labels are different. Silver US, white UK. Steelbooks are somewhat different. Slight difference to how the spines are set up. Matte for the UK, glossy for the US. Your art cards inside, matte for the UK, glossy for the US. Different product numbers on the back. And of course the J cards are different, and you're going to see the different labeling with things like the UK ratings. But unless you're really someone for whom the UK ratings just grate upon the fabric of your soul, or you must have matching glossy steelbooks or something, if you have waited to pick up Ahsoka, now is probably the time, but not from the US. Import it from the UK through something like Amazon UK. And I have mentioned recently in some other videos that I've had some issues with importing from other countries recently. I've had people sending me stuff, individual sellers, that have either taken extra long or simply disappeared into the ether, never to be seen again, damaged and bounced back to the original country. But I've yet to have any issues with Amazon UK delivery typically, though that is probably because Amazon UK, when delivering into the US, typically uses DHL. I've had my own horror stories with DHL, particularly with those Japanese Video 8s, but when it comes to Amazon UK being delivered through DHL, so far, that seems to be going smoothly and relatively quickly. Which also means I'll be able to show you Mandalorian Complete Season 3 coming out of the UK sometime in the near future. Why can't I show you that now? Because not only did the UK not get Ahsoka until significantly later than the US did, it's again a staggered release where it and Mandalorian Season 3 aren't even coming out at the same time. There's a gap between them. So Mando is coming out right around the time that I'm recording this, or shortly thereafter, and then we'll see that imported into the US. Then I'll be able to show you sometime in the coming weeks. So you always have to wait a little bit longer for these Disney Plus series in the UK, but you do wind up getting a product that, from an American standpoint, is probably considered to be, as in my opinion, a superior choice. Your mileage will certainly vary. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.